Continuing with our reading of the novel Dallas Pimiento, Book 4, Bronco Fury, beginning with a piece called The Pumpkin's Enduring Appeal. During the bass solos, the sounds of the outside world penetrated my solitude, causing me to become confused. Was I writing a story about a team of plucky miniature bears escaping the clutches of the Pika Emperor through the garden of giant bean pods? Or about the frantic laugh-tracked search for this season's sexiest 13-year-old? I usually doodled on the side of the page, waiting for Joe Henderson to come honking back into hearing, but today I gazed out the window to my left. The new discotitube, modeled after one of my side-of-the-page doodles from earlier in the year, stood outside in the parking lot, its styrofoam packing pieces and cardboard shipping container all about it on the asphalt. Whose fault? The perverse module of my brain asked. I shook my head and returned my attention to my notebook, but my momentum was gone. Sidney, the nominal leader of the miniature bears, found himself pinching the bridge of his nose as he slowed to a halt in the middle of the path between two rows of beans. The rest of the bears gathered around him. "Sidney, what's wrong? Why are we stopping?" they asked. "I don't know," he said, looking up at them, these good friends with whom he had risked so much and achieved such dubious victories. "Don't you guys ever get the feeling that it's all so futile?" "Sidney, we haven't got time for that," piped up old Charlie, who was actually a gopher and only an honorary bear. "The palace guards of the Pika Emperor Big Salad VII are hot on our trail, or have you forgotten that?" "I haven't forgotten what's going on, Charles," Sidney replied in a soft voice. "It's just that I wonder what we're doing here. How did we get into this situation? Who is this Big Salad VII anyway?" "Sidney," said little Jeremy, the youngest of the bears, "those are questions for others to ponder. People with critical minds, perhaps. Not us bears. Our task is to keep on keeping on. Right?" He turned to his comrades as he shouted this last word. "Right!" they all answered in chorus. "There they are!" came the voice of a guard only a few yards away. The bears, including Sidney, ran. They would have been captured, however, had it not been for the fortuitous arrival at that moment of the discotitube. Cellophane owls and chewing gum lions. It didn't take too long for Miss Darwa to reattach the stuffed goat's leg. Once the initial traversing stitch is completed, their moderately attractive Spencer explained, the rest is easy. "Excellent," Hale Newbolt pronounced in a flat voice. He stood up from his inspection of Miss Darwa's handiwork and called to his assistants, who were lounging about the studio. "We're ready to continue. Prepare the hat." As the three young men rose wearily from their seats, however, Gifford Checkerman entered the studio by the street-side door, delaying yet again the project. "So!" Checkerman barked. "Gifford," Newbolt involuntarily blurted his estranged friend's name. "Using my goat in your crappy Sights of the 60s thing," Checkerman accused, marching forward into the midst of the clutter under the skylight. "How do you figure this is your goat?" Newbolt demanded. As Checkerman began to enumerate the steps in his logical assumption of the goat's ownership, Newbolt snapped his fingers at his assistants. "We're not stopping working," he informed them. "Carry on with your instructions." "Not with my goat, you're not," Checkerman interrupted his review. He took a step closer to the goat and stretched out his hand to seize it. Miss Darwa jumped in front of him. "Oh, no, you don't," she snapped. "I just sewed his leg back on, and I'm not going to have you two tear the whole thing apart." "Get out of my way, woman," Checkerman man hissed. "Tommy, Earl, Milton," Newbolt commanded, "throw Mr. Checkerman out." Earl was the first to throw up his hands. "We're paid to help produce art, not engage in violence," he objected. The other two tacitly agreed, hanging back. "A fine crew you are," Newbolt sneered. He turned to Checkerman and raised his hands threateningly. "So help me, Gifford. If you don't leave, I'll—" "No, you won't," Miss Darwa brought her angry common sense to bear on Newbolt as well. "This is a place of creativity. Can't you two think of some creative, productive solution?" "Where did you get this woman, Hale? A museum?" Checkerman asked with a laugh, leading Newbolt to wonder where exactly he had gotten her. Nancy proceeds to document the discrepancy. The only known recording of the Pica Emperor Big Salad VII's voice was made during a rare meeting between the monarch and a group of ambassadors representing the Exceptional Society's territorial holdings. In the 16-minute recording, the emperor is heard to remark several times on the health benefits of plums. Of course, if one is able to swallow the seeds, as I do, the benefits are multiplied 3 times, Big Salad VII says at one point. The man who made the recording, Ambassador Ellison, was, like most members of the diplomatic corps, not required to wear the distinctive head box that characterized members of the Exceptional Society. After the cult's annexation of the Punklicker Islands following its sudden infusion of billions of dollars bequeathed to it by a celebrated movie star, it found itself responsible for many people who were not members. This necessarily led to a liberalizing of certain parts of society dogma. The box remains, remarked the then current Director-in-Chief David C., remains indispensable. Ambassador Ellison recalled the Director-in-Chief's stirring words as he retired to the quarters set aside for the Society's diplomatic team. He was tempted to join the Society formally. He knew that he was damn lucky to have made it this high up in the Corps without being a member. A lifetime of pride in his well-groomed hair, however, was not something he could lightly toss aside. Then, too, there were his deeply held convictions about the truth of Christianity and the benefits it had bestowed upon civilization. He sighed as he removed the now famous cassette tape from the hidden recorder and slipped it into his luggage. "What did you fellows think of His Majesty's obsession with plums?" he asked his colleagues as they all sat down to relax over a pile of paperwork. Today, in the new age of enlightenment, researchers into the history of the Pica throne and its dealings with the Exceptional Society have found the nearly forgotten tape to be a treasure trove of valuable information. Listen to the way Big Salad pronounces plums. He's using the divalvic P. It is clear from this that he was educated at a monastery, one opined. Nonsense, another objected. He's slightly drunk. A third had a deeper insight. I think I hear the squeak of a lazy boy in the background. Pilots make use of valuable coupon. There was enough money in the old man's pockets for one last ride on the Ferris wheel. After Elaine and Harvey had rolled his body under the out-of-service gyro wagon, they walked hand in hand towards the flashing 10-story structure. In the distance, the sun had just dropped below the line of trees that marked the edge of the world, for all they knew. As the young couple took their seats on the wheel, above them, sitting alone on the opposite end, was Red Vlamick, the adventurer. He scanned the horizon impatiently. "Hurry the night," he thought to himself. In the paper sack beside him was the small but powerful pyrotechnic device that would forever alter his fortunes in this rinky-dink town. "A well-balanced wheel," commented old Buster, who had worked for one carnival or another for 40 years. He couldn't tell you the exact number of outfits he had been with, but he remembered every Ferris wheel. "Looks like it, Corky," the sunburned young man at the controls agreed indifferently. As the restraining bar on the last seat was locked in place, he set the wheel in motion. Looking away sourly, he put a cigarette in his mouth. "Those things will be the death of you," Buster warned Corky. "You won't make 40 more circuits if you keep smoking those." "I have no intention of working for the carnival for 40 years, Buster," Corky informed the old man. He softened his gaze and looked up at the first stars. "I just got to think things out," he said. "Circuits can mean circuits around the sun, not just the carnival's route," Buster reminded the other man. Corky looked into Buster's eyes and nodded, but did not take the cigarette out of his mouth. Elaine and Harvey smiled at each other as their seat descended once more. It was fun to be together. What a shame it would have to end before the sun came up again. As they squeezed each other's hand and felt themselves begin to rise once more, there was an explosion overhead. They looked up and saw a monstrous pair of boots in the sky, made up of thousands of sparkling lights. "Are they closing early?" Harvey wondered. The scandalous corn of the 10th family. Who knows how much farther Tip Nance would have wandered in his crazed state had not his girlfriend found him when she did. Certainly not his parents, although they could fantasize as much as they liked about their son being arrested as a vagrant in the next valley. He could have been locked up in some nut house. Tip's mother's eyes grew wide as she made this realization. "Yes, yes," agreed Tip's father, already tiring of the game. "Do you think it was the beef jerky?" Darwin, Nance's girlfriend, asked as she drove him back towards town. "Beef jerky." Beef jerky, Nance mumbled. His face was green. He was sweaty, but cold. He seemed not to know where he was nor what was happening. That old beef jerky you ate at the factory, Darwa continued. Do you think you had a reaction to it? Reaction. Reaction. Nance's eyes were half closed as he repeated the words. Well, where is he now? Nance's mother demanded after receiving the call from Darwa. I've got him lying down here at my place, was the answer. Your place? Why didn't you take him to the hospital? I can take care of him just as well here. Nance's mother reiterated the conversation to her husband. After getting off the phone, the man's eyebrows lowered and his lips stuck out. You don't suppose she's got him in her bedroom? He asked hesitantly. She'd better not, Nance's mother growled, suddenly realizing what her husband meant and dashing for her car keys. By the time she and Nance's father arrived at the cheaply made duplex, however, another interested party was already there. Of course, Tip's ingestion of the select label beef jerky had nothing to do with his feverish behavior, said a spokesman for the Mind Verve Company. But in any event, if he'll just sign this paper, he'll receive this substantial check. As Nance's mother put a pen into her son's hand and moved it across the document, she felt the sting of shame at strangers having seen him in his girlfriend's bed. Nancy avails herself of Terry's offer. Although often mistaken for Sean Connery, Ned Feast was not, in fact, all that good-looking. His personal physician, Dr. Flippengrab, speculated upon the conundrum. I think it's because your face is not symmetrical, he said, staring hard at Feast in one of the many examination rooms in his thriving practice. But Sean Connery's face is symmetrical, Feast pointed out. Yes, Flippengrab agreed, but I think this side of your face, he tapped Feast's right cheek with a tongue depressor, looks like Sean Connery from Diamonds Are Forever. Not a particularly good movie, Feast jumped in. No, too silly, Flippengrab concurred. And on this side, he tapped the left cheek, looks like Sean Connery in, I don't know, Name of the Rose, but without the beard. Feast looked at his tiny reflection in the doctor's stethoscope. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think I should grow a beard? Perhaps even out the difference? No, Flippengrab considered, eyeing Feast's cheeks and neck critically. I don't think you have the necessary beard-growing capacity to grow a beard thick enough to make the necessary distinction-blurring thing. He passed a hand over his own face, miming the act of stroking a luxurious cascade of facial hair. Feast sighed. His gaze fell to the shiny buckle on the doctor's belt, but then he realized what he was looking at, and could be seen looking at, and glanced away quickly. Don't be so disheartened, Flippengrab encouraged Feast manfully. Not everybody can look like a movie star. But I was so sure that if I could get this little discrepancy cleared up, that I could get into the movies and possibly get out of my shitty job, Feast declaimed. Well, there's more to being a movie star than good looks, you know, Flippengrab reminded his patient. There's all that hard-learned acting ability, for one thing. None fancier than the spoon licker may attend. Treat yourself to a day or two at the mall, advised Dr. Reuter. That's what you domesticated people like, isn't it? And when you're done shopping for sweaters and eating at the food court, maybe you'll feel like coming back and getting some work done. This advice, directed at Hawkshaw, was not appreciated. Hawkshaw glared at Dr. Reuter sourly. His recent marriage, as Dr. Reuter had predicted, was a source of frustration. Hawkshaw's wife, a simple, sweet girl from the valley, was increasingly puzzled at Hawkshaw's devotion to the lab. Already, he had missed several important experiments because the wife insisted on his staying home with her. And you've gained a few pounds, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Reuter pointed at Hawkshaw's once trim abdomen with a hot comb. Hawkshaw jumped down from his stool. Enough, he cried. We're still newlyweds. I just haven't broken her to my routine yet, that's all. He began fiddling with the knobs on an antique microscope. Dr. Reuter stepped next to Hawkshaw. He placed a comforting hand on Hawkshaw's arm. Easy there, Hawkshaw, he said. I know how it is. As I told you, I know about these things. I've been through it. You just had to learn the hard way, as we all do. Hawkshaw sighed. How did you get through it, he asked. Well, I didn't get divorced, Reuter joked. Hawkshaw didn't seem to think this funny. Dr. Reuter took on a more serious tone. No, listen to me. I found a way to achieve the balance between a happy marriage and a fulfilling career in science. He stared hard at Hawkshaw. Do you want to know how I did it? Hawkshaw looked back at Dr. Reuter. Sure, he answered. His voice was slightly hoarse. Come with me, Dr. Ritter instructed. As he led Hoxha out into the hall and down the stairs to the basement, he told him, "What I'm about to show you I have never shown to anyone else." They entered the basement and crossed to a large temporal suspension chamber. "In here is my secret," Ritter revealed. He fitted a key in the door and opened it. Inside was a facsimile of a living room. "Hi, honey. Home again already?" Mrs. Ritter greeted him. Cold feet are specified in the recipe. Having mailed the letter to his former instructor, Dallas Pimiento sat down with a book of literary terms to look up the definition of a sonnet. He nodded his head as the definition tallied with his dim memories of the subject. He closed the book with a sigh and scanned the shelves. "Stuart," he called to his assistant. "What?" came the answering call from farther back in the house. "Come here." Pimiento wanted to make sure the man heard exactly what he wanted. Stuart Monkey entered the study with an apron over his chinos and dress shirt. "What do you need?" he asked Pimiento. "Find the dictionary of musical terms, will you? I want to look something up," Pimiento directed Monkey. "Okay." Monkey took her around the book-filled room. "It's not in here. I already looked." "Okay." Monkey left the room. Monkey, who had worked for Dallas Pimiento for 2 months now, was a recording artist. He had proved thus far to be an excellent assistant and an amiable companion. It amused Pimiento when strangers took them to be lovers. Perhaps it gave him a secret erotic thrill as well? The fact that Monkey was not a fellow painter made him all the more right for the job. Pimento's faded memories of his own days of apprenticeship were yet strong enough to make the idea of repeating that situation repellent. As Pimiento waited, he doodled on a piece of cheap copier paper. For some reason, these doodles were most satisfying to him. He longed to put them out as artworks for public consumption, but knew he could not. He was committed to figuration. The idea of presenting as art some confused slop that had cost him no effort at all went against his code. The fact that others did exactly that and lived in mansions as a consequence, while he was starting middle age in a tiny house buried underground, galled him. "How many books do you reckon you've got?" Stuart Monkey asked, entering the room with a desired book in his hand. "About 6,000, Pimiento answered. "What are you going to look up?" "The difference between a sonata and a concerto." Pimiento began thumbing through the book. "Oh, I could have told you that," said Monkey. "I think." Gourmet steak is shipped through the mail. With no more consideration for Cynthia's sensibilities than he would grant a repulsive worm, Rhodes picked his nose in front of her as she told him about the miniature bear's near miraculous escape from the grounds of the Imperial Palace. She averted her eyes as Rhodes wiped his finger on the wine list. "The Emperor's security is getting a bad reputation," Rhodes noted. "First Laird Foxfur and Leonard Franker, now these bears you speak of." "Are you through?" Cynthia asked. "What do you mean?" "Picking your nose!" Cynthia's hand was shielding her eyes. "Oh, sorry," Rhodes smiled. "You can look now." "Thank you." Cynthia looked around the restaurant. She spied Andy Summers sitting at a table several yards away. "Excuse me," she said. She walked over to the police guitarist and introduced herself as a friend of Dallas Pimiento. "Ah, yes," Summers' face brightened at the name. "I just wanted to tell you that I thought I Advanced Masked and Bewitched were amazing, and to ask you when you're going to do another album with Fripp. As a matter of fact, we have a third collaboration coming out very soon. It's called Water Over Subway." "Well, that's good news." Cynthia thanked him for his time and returned to his seat. "Who was that?" Rhodes asked her. "Nobody," Cynthia told him. She liked to keep the various parts of her life rigidly compartmentalized. "Now," she said as she took up the wine list, "what shall we have?" "I don't drink," Rhodes informed her. "Then what did you insist we come here for?" Cynthia demanded, slapping the wine list down on the table. The Forklift Promenade, where they were, was known primarily for its wines, as well as its unique combination of exclusivity and camaraderie. "Because I have a coupon," Rhodes revealed. He reached into his coat and withdrew the handwritten document on parchment that entitled him to 2 free dinners. "Where'd you get that?" Cynthia asked. "Sting." Yona Grubb makes excuses for Dot. More than a few observers felt that the performances at the Extemporary Box this past Tuesday were the strongest ever presented at the venue. Following the lead of his partner, Waffle Industry, Coach's Cold launched into a stirring monologue about the betrayal of the South during the past 2 decades, using a spatula and an antique airplane propeller as props. "Who are you?" prompted one of the audience-elected motivators sitting before the stage. "I do not answer the queries of the living room audience, for I am Pronto, king of the horses." Cole stepped forward proudly. His partner, Waffle Industry, visibly taken aback by this display of virtuosity, metamorphosized into a two-headed centipede, trampling the rights of the workers as he moved stage right, throwing tiny squares of green cloth about him as he did so. This started a furious debate amongst a group of turtleneck-clad students at the rear of the box, some of whom saw the cloth squares as representing dollar bills, and some who saw them as representing leaves of cabbage. The few who felt they were used handkerchiefs received the brunt of the former group's ire. For the rest of the evening, this loud debate vied with the performance on the metastage for the attentions of those in the audience. "I thought it was all prearranged," said Todd Arachnum, a philosophy activist from Wonk, after the conclusion. His comments, although only intended as a preliminary commentary on the necessary synchronicity of formats, were overheard by a couple of departing textile designers who had pinned green cloth squares taken from the floor to their vestments. Their angry denouncements drowned out any attempt at follow-up on my part. I retreated to the small kitchen backstage reserved for members of the Drama Society. Elitist, I know, but I find value in such traditions, to let the reality of what I had seen penetrate my deeper memory. As I sat formulating my ideas for this piece of criticism, one of the custodial staff, regrettably unnamed herein, entered. "Is it over?" he asked me. I nodded, drinking in the beauty of his old mop. We're going to call it quits there. See you.